trying to make something similar. This was pretty simple setup I was doing with just two sources moving in opposing directions. I happen to be doing it with the temperature. So like one is positive temperature and one is negative temperature. You get the same thing going with, I think this is called like a Helmholtz mix. Might be a different one that's like Raleigh Bernard. I don't know. There's like very special names or whatever for these things. I think it's the Raleigh Bernard is like two different temperatures. Kind of this idea or whatever. These are the sources and stuff like that are offset, but that's basically is like heating and cooling happening at once or whatever, and you get opposing flows. If you boiled stuff in your pasta water or something, you might see this pattern at the top of your cooking pot, crock pot. It's like this is the top of the fluid, and then it bends around and turns back upside down or something like that. It's cool. It's like Voronoi pattern as well. You just kind of see these basic patterns again and again wherever you're looking. But yeah, this is kind of the idea, is just two different temperatures going up and down or whatever. Been anxiously refreshing the Discord every 2 minutes. Good. It's good to, you caught me. Yeah, I didn't do much of an intro or whatever today because I was just in a rush setting everything up. Follow the Drift Smoke thing on Twitch. Yeah, go for it. Let me know if you need any tips or stuff like that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to share the whole setup and everything like that for it. One of the reasons is that the vehicle is player two's vehicle, so I don't want to pass that around and distribute it. It's up to him if he wants to, when he's ready, or if he wants to share it, he can do that. But I'm happy to share like the basic simulation, the burnout and stuff like that. Learned a lot about pyro. Yeah, that's my main specialty or whatever. So that's why I've been focused on it quite a bit earlier when I was first doing the streams like a few months ago or whatever. But yeah, we'll get back into it today. So I'm just going to be doing just a geometry network, or to get into the SOP level of Houdini. Then you can just do the add node to create a single particle. So you just have one point, one particle at the origin. Streamlabs. What are you doing here? Yeah, go for it. I think it'd be cool to see you follow along the workflow and stuff. Long Walk Dathan, how's it going? All right, so we have 1 point. This is going to be like a source particle. I usually do all of my pyro simulations with particles. I think it's just a good workflow or whatever to be working with, or it's a little bit more efficient. And then just p-scale. I think the side effects tools. No Genome, how's it going? Another awesome stream, hopefully. Just getting started, but yeah, it should be a fun one. So p-scale, this is going to be the radius of the particle. If you want to visualize it, you can just go to the D key over the viewport to bring up this display options, and then disks, and then I'm actually visualizing the radius or the size of the p-scale. So this is going to be the size of one source. Your girlfriend has released her first single today. Can I share it with you? Yeah, I'm not set up to I don't know if I can play it. I'm not going to play it, but feel free to pass it around. Blast it. So I'm going to do a transform. Yeah, thanks for sharing it. I'll check it out. I was looking for new music and stuff like that to play while I'm working. All right, so I'm doing transform, and then I'm just offsetting this other source. Just go 1 unit over. So this will be the 2 sources, and we'll just point them towards each other. Will be like the meme. What is it? It for me. Two things going at the same direction. I don't know if I can find it. I don't think I can find it. All right. Naranjos, how's it going? Attribute create to add p-scale instead of attribute wrangle that adds p-scale. If I'm just actually like initializing or creating an attribute, I like to use this because I think it's a bit more clear for other people. Like opening the file, it shows the little descriptive text of what you're creating. If you just do a wrangle, I mean, you can for sure do the same thing, but it will just get pretty confusing in your file if you're just doing like 20 wrangles. And this I know explicitly I'm creating an attribute automatically, and then so I can't really middle mouse and like adjust that parameter. With this one, you have the parameter ladder that you can move the setting around in. Then you just have extra things up here for setting the metadata or the type info of the attribute. So for 3D vectors or stuff like that, it's just my habit. You can set the default. I mean, you can do all this stuff with Vex. It just becomes a bit more verbose or cumbersome or whatever. So this is why I do the attribute create, just because I think it's a bit easier for people to follow, I guess. Yeah, I mean, if you're going in and you're just only using Vex, it's a perfectly valid way to work. But for other people like viewing the files or following along or whatever, you'd have to actually like click on the node, parse, look through the code and stuff like that. This is a bit more, I don't know, the blessed, the ordained, the sanctioned method of side effects. You write and expose parameters from a wrangle. Yeah, I mean, you can do, of course, you can do set this and make a little thing that's the p-scale, and then promote it and do something like this. But again, it's just kind of like some extra steps. I mean, you're kind of like writing something from scratch that it already exists inside of Houdini. So there's not really, if you're doing it for fun or to experiment, it's cool. But for everyday work, I don't know if existing nodes and stuff exist, like are already set up, I'll try to stick to those. It's a bit just more expected, or I don't know. So we have the 2 things. So for example, this attribute create, if I'm setting 2 different temperatures for them, temperature, one thing I can do here is set the temperature of this one to 1. And then if I look at the geometry spreadsheet, you can see this one gets 1, but then the merge node has this exclamation point, exclamation mark. So it's saying this stream doesn't have a setting for temperature. It will just grab basically the default value, or it's like an uninitialized attribute. So with the attribute create node, it's nice because you can use the default setting, and then any uninitialized attributes will get that value automatically. You can set that up with a wrangle, but again, it's just some more steps and a bit less clear because you're doing it from scratch. So like you can set it up here and you know that it will work. It's a bit more expected or whatever. Just write the wrangle. All right. So one thing I'll probably do here is do a -1. So I want this one moving this way, and then the default temperature will be 1. Is the smoke solver faster for doing non-combustion pyro stuff? We'll get into it here. So I'll do a DOPNet. I don't think either of them are necessarily faster. I just look at the pyro solver as like a bit more convenience kind of. So if you look at both the smoke solver and the pyro solver, they're pretty much the same. This pyro solver just has some extra shaping controls. That's dissipation, disturbance, shredding, sharpening, turbulence, confinement. So if you wanted to, you could build those out. You have dissipate, disturb, turbulence, confinement. I'm typing too fast. So just put all those into a merge. Yeah, the pyro has the gas combustion setup as well as these shaping tools. So if I put these into maybe velocity update, and then I could do gas combustion into sourcing over here, then you basically have the same features as the pyro solver. If I even go to allow editing of contents, you can see that's basically what side effects has done. And then they've just wired up those parameters and tools and stuff like that. So they have the turbulence, shredding, confinement, gas disturb, but everything is here feeding into the smoke solver. So for me, it's just a matter of how you're working. Again, I kind of prefer to work like visually. Here at a glance, I could see if I just do maybe this, like I can visually see what shaping tools and micro solvers or combustion models or whatever I'm using or not using. If you use the pyro solver, you have to click around a few different tabs, and over time I just got frustrated or like got tired of doing that to inspect all the settings. So I just visually like to work this way as like more, I don't know, visual way of seeing the stuff that's impacting your solve. And then as well, like if you want to extend stuff, you can just build them out and add extra bands of turbulence. Pyro solvers for babies, actually. I mean, it just depends how you're working. Like they have as well it's just different levels of like speed or convenience that you need, I guess. So they have pyro solver up here. That's like the highest level of function of, I don't know, like interaction. So this is kind of like the Vellum workflow. And then just as you need access or you want to spend time like putting down extra nodes, you can go in and build things out or change them around or whatever as you need. But yeah, for me, I just prefer to work this way, as it's like, I don't know, maybe like a minimalism approach or something like that. But yeah, everything basically this is like the core that drives everything else. So even that SOP based pyro solver. You click around enough inside of it and you see that they have the smoke solver, in this case the sparse smoke solver. But yeah, they are all doing pretty much the same stuff. Make your own smoke solver. Just do it all in Wrangles. Yes, that's kind of like a balance for me of how much time do you want to spend, and then how clear is it going to be to other people picking up the scene and working with it. But yeah, over time I just kind of decided that, or I might change my mind later on or something, but for right now, this to me is the easiest way, especially reusability and stuff. Like if I have turbulence settings that are really working quite well, I can just copy this node, go to my new file or new scene or whatever, and paste it and grab those settings. If you're working with a pyro solver and you really have turbulence settings that are working nicely, you have to like copy this parameter, go into here, copy each of these little settings, or it just becomes a bit less like modular of a workflow, I guess. September, how's it going? We're back. Slightly scuffed streaming setup today, but I ordered a new HDMI cable. I'm hoping tomorrow to get see if I can get like the Streamlabs OBS working with all the fancy pro streaming bells and whistles and alerts and stuff. All right. So we have this smoke solver. We're bringing just 2 particles in, one on the left, one on the right. They have 2 different temperature values, positive, negative, and should be good. Just gonna want to make our domain a little bit bigger. So for X, the size of 2, midpoint or center maybe of 1, or actually I think 0.5. So you go up. Now we're just sounding, because I have 1 particle at 0, 1 at 1. They're a bit hard to see right now because they're not in the simulation, but I can just use the SOP solver to bring them in. Again, I'm usually doing the multi-solver. So I prefer to source or bring in my smoke sources before all the other steps are performed. So I could just do this external and get the primary input of the parent node. And then if I go over here on creation, do solve on creation, then it will actually solve on the first frame. So I can actually visualize or see the particles now. You're recreating the smoke colliding you uploaded on Twitter. It's not a full recreation. I'm not going to be going at a high resolution, I think, and then I'm going to be trying to set this up with particles, or maybe pack primitives or bullet or something like that. So it's going to be a bit more abstract, like something getting moved by these smokes. But yeah, I decided just to start kind of in the same branch or direction or whatever. So this, just say import particles, and then I just do the gas particle to field to actually create smoke or density or volumes from these particles. So the destination can be density. Not going to use any attribute. Don't want to do extrapolated, so we want to use the actual like p scale for the radius. And then I'm usually making this threshold pretty low. If I do higher resolution domain or whatever, might be able to see what this threshold is doing. You just disable the It's kind of glitching right now because I can still see like the particle disks and the smoke. So just do this magenta flag to turn that off. Just hide the particle geometry. So threshold is like the harshness. Like at 1, it's a full interpolation of 1 and 0, starting at the center, going to the edge. The closer you bring your threshold to 0, then it's just using the full value throughout the particle radius. And then instead of copy, maybe just do add, so that every frame it's adding density. You just do copy, and it just keeps overwriting the values, the existing values. So we do that, we have our smoke getting created, but it's not moving anywhere. We just do gas particle to field again. So this one, we want it to bring in or add to a different field, this time temperature. And we actually want to use an attribute this time because we have varying values per particle. We have a positive one and a negative one. And again, just do add, not extrapolated, and maybe slam the threshold down. So they're going in 2 different directions, but not the right way. We're going up and down instead of left and right. So on the smoke solver buoyancy direction, you can just change that to X. And then they're going that way. Boom. Blasting. I tend usually to turn this temperature diffusion off or really low. That's just like a blur. And if you want to do the OpenCL stuff, that will make your simulation use the graphics card or your GPU. You could go to higher resolutions and stuff, and it should still solve and simulate and stuff like that a little bit faster. Boom, done. So usually I'll at this point or somewhere along the lines, I'll go up here and start to visualize stuff at this level, the SOP level. This way you can add lighting and you'll see like shadows and stuff like that. I just add a spotlight. Then you can just see the shape, evaluate the form of your simulation and stuff like that. Smarter everyday video, 2 vortex rings colliding. Yeah, so I remember seeing a photography like breakdown where they had the 2 jets that were like puffing vortices at each other. Twitter compression. Yeah, it didn't like, I don't know if it was like my FFmpeg settings or whatever, but it didn't do a good job of preserving the detail. So I'll just wait for the ad for that to finish up. Yeah, and then I'll usually pin the viewport to be at this level, and then I can still go in and mess around. Under my cache, usually turn off the simulation cache. Again, that's just something that you should do if you're using OpenCL. It will slow things down quite a bit if your caching involves putting it to RAM or to your hard disk. So to pull data from your graphics card every frame slows stuff down a little bit. And then the last thing I usually do is just convert to OpenVDB. For display purposes, it's a bit faster than displaying the full volume. So now you should be able to go to even higher resolutions. Depending on your GPU and stuff like that, you should still be able to work in like something close to real time. Yeah, this is the one I was thinking about. I think they talk about their different forces or stuff like that, but they're trying to get like specific shaping settings and stuff like that. This is a kind of like a crown splash with water, like those spikes or whatever determine if this was a water droplet, like that would turn into the crown tendril or whatever. But yeah, this is a really good reference. All right. So yeah, if we wanted to do something closer to what they were doing, I think you could just do enable solver. And then if I do $ simulation frame equals 1, this is saying just do shift click on it to see the results, but basically this condition is only true on the first frame, or it will only evaluate to 1 on the first frame of your simulation. So instead of a continuous stream, everything is just emitted once. And then it looked like the density like disappears. Might just do pre-molt. This just increases the amount of density you're looking at. And then in that video, they talk about, I think they do just different like forces, but basically with computer graphics, you need maybe to switch to different advection models or methods. You'll see that will change the shape or the results quite a bit. Like these higher order ones that I usually switch to, they do a better job at preserving the shape or whatever. Like before I was without doing those, you get a little bit more smoothing or like numerical dissipation and stuff. Like the tips of these flows are unresolved, or they just get lost in the grid. You just end up with like a kind of smoother result. So that's why I'm usually switching on if you're solving with OpenCL, you don't really get a big performance hit, because everything with CUDA or the OpenCL calculations get performed so quickly that it's not a big performance cost. But if you're not using OpenCL, if you're using the CPU, these might be a bit more expensive or slow down your simulation. Then again, just because we're doing a grid computer graphics simulation, there's like these symmetry artifacts. Why not RK4? So RK4, I've tend to gotten like some unexpected results. I kind of think of it as like if you're doing time or like subdivision, like if you're doing an interpolation, if you're doing a subdivision interpolation or a cubic subdivision, this RK4 can get a little bit wild, like at the derivatives or whatever. So like it can create really wild values sometimes. That's generally why I stay away from it, but it depends on your setting and stuff. But I've just had other sims that this has caused it to like blow up or give you really over-exaggerated results. And maybe for something like this where the things are just pretty controlled setup, it's okay. But if you're doing like an explosion with velocities injected everywhere and stuff, I've just had like, it introduces more irregularities or like unexpected results or whatever. So should be okay with this. If we want to start adding some of the extra settings, like the extra shaping tools or stuff, can add the turbulence, just plug it into the velocity update. And then see it as moving stuff around, adding some more swirls. You can move the swirls size around. So you're just creating finer detail or finer turbulence, higher resolution stuff. I also usually do the D key over the viewport again, texture, turn off the resolution limit. So that resolution limit can downsample or like blur your volume. It's like an optimization hack, but I usually turn it off so I get a better visualization of stuff. So yeah, this seems to be working. You can do some stuff. Maybe the swirl size is too small. Pulse length, I'll usually make that longer so that it updates more slowly. The pulse length is like how quickly it will change, update the directions and stuff of everything. And then just the overall scale of stuff. I'm just gonna make that more subtle overall. Just generally just does a good job, like you're breaking up the symmetry of everything. So it's not perfectly like aligned on axes. So even sometimes if you're just doing a really small amount, it can do a good job of just making stuff look like a little bit more organic, or so that these features aren't like always perfectly symmetrical and stuff like that. So stuff here is again looking just a little bit more natural. If you turn off disturbance, basically like you have perfect symmetry of things, just negative, positive temperature. So your result just looks a little like, could be cool design, like a cool graphic, but in terms of being realistic or whatever, it's never really going to be like this X form or the plus or whatever in real life. So you just add, even undetectable, like visually it doesn't seem to be that different, but you can see it's no longer like axis aligned or perfectly symmetrical or whatever. All right. So that's cool. I'm gonna try to add some particles and stuff. Maybe as well, like instead of only emitting smoke when it's the first frame, maybe I'll just do when the simulation frame is less than 10. So it's like a jet for 10 frames or something like that. Well, you could play around with this, but basically the longer you're spraying the two jets at each other, the more impact or the bigger interaction event or whatever you'll have between the two things. All right. So I'm gonna bring in some particles for these things to move around. I think what I can do is just, so I just have two particles to start with. If I do VDB from particles, then I can convert these to the VDB. This is like metaballs if you're surfacing a flip sim. If you just want them as fog or like density, just move them over from distance. It's like for metaball or for making a surface. And then this is just like visually making them thicker or denser. And then if I just scatter, just gonna turn off the disks, go back to points. It's a spicy metaball. It's the Italian computer graphics primitive. So I'm thinking maybe I don't want to do the scatter. Maybe I'm just going to bring in this density and just all these extra inputs, you can just use them for whatever you want. They're just like kind of placeholders or whatever. So I think I can just do a pop network, pop solver. I'm going to try to do everything like in one go here. So I don't have to like waste time doing a bunch of different simulations. So I think you can just keep plopping things down and just making your little centipede of simulations. Metapolpetta. That's the true Italian pronunciation of metaball. All right. So my geometry source, I can set that to my second context geometry. The other thing I think you have to be worried about is the way I've set these up. Everything's going into the smoke object DOP object name. So the particles are all going, let me go back into this view. The particles are all going like inside of the same geometry placeholder of the smoke object. So you have to be a bit careful because I've brought in these under the geometry name. So even if I turn off the pop solver, my source particles are going into the geometry area. You can put them into a different area if you just change the data name. So I could just call this like source SRC particles. Then you can see that this is still geometry data, but it's no longer called geometry. I'm kind of overriding the name. And I'm just going to copy that and tell all these other nodes where to look for the particles. So now these two datas can coexist and they're not sharing or fighting for like the same name or whatever. So now I can see them. I think before, because I had this one say use external SOP, it was basically blowing away the any existing information. It was blowing it away or killing it or deleting it or whatever. So yeah, we have the gas blowing around and we're sourcing particles from that second input here. They're not moving. This pop solver by default, it just moves them according to geometry attributes. It doesn't look at the existing fields or volumes. You just do DOP advect by volumes. I think you can just say DOP data. The DOP object is just going to be smoke object. Now they're kind of moving, but I think this update force isn't the best. Just up to you. You can do update force, velocity, or position. I usually update the velocity and maybe update that advection model just to match or whatever. Sometimes increasing this velocity blend will help this stuff match or line up. Like it's not getting lost behind as much anymore. It's just up to you depending on what you're doing with the velocity field. Like you might just be doing it to blow some leaves around or something, so it doesn't always need to be 100% precise. Now if I go, have an advected particle. It's been a minute since I've advected a particle. Now if I go back up here, maybe instead of density, I'm just gonna get the geometry. Maybe I don't even need to do that. Just leave it empty. We'll, by default, get that. First time seeing you live. Thanks so much for the VODs. They really helped me step up my Houdini skills. Yeah, of course. Thanks for tuning in, catching the live stream. But yeah, for people who are in different time zones or whatever, it's just upload them to YouTube, or you go back and they're preserved. Never know when to use multi-solvers. You can use them. Like if you wanted to, you could do this, I think, with a multiple solver. And the results and stuff like that will be the same. So a lot of these nodes will have multiple solvers built in. Like if you're doing it outside of here, you're just kind of doing it again. Like it's a bit weird. I think, I don't know, you could do many of them, and it's kind of just like a merge node in SOPs. Like you can just keep adding extraneous ones or whatever. I'm just gonna go back. This is a bit easier it's less headache inducing to look at. See your nodes on your own Houdini as you add them. I've kind of thought about doing something like that. I think Noah XYZ, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm on the same thought process as you. I think basically, like, if I had a script that would run every so often to publish or export my nodes to a HTML or to somewhere on the internet, you could like be pulling them in live or referencing to that or something. You could do the same thing, I think, with Houdini digital assets. Like there's ways to synchronize it, but I don't know how quickly that is, like to do stuff in real time. That's more designed for just like working collaboratively. It's not, so I don't know, like you might be able to do stuff with sockets or Python, but yeah, that would be cool to do that. Yeah, I've been thinking maybe just exporting a copy or a representation of my file like every 10 minutes, and then it's just like checkpoints if you want to pull that in or something like that. Could be cool. All right. So if I play the scene, it's still pretty quick. It's not exactly real time. Doing the particle advection slows stuff down a little bit, but it's still fairly interactive. So that's why I'm doing everything in one. Like sometimes you want to cache out your velocity and stuff and information, but generally makes your workflow a bit slower if you're doing that. So this pop source impulse activation, this is basically the same idea as this enable solver I was doing earlier. You would just copy and paste the expression if you want that to turn off after the 10th frame. Whoops. Scratch that. So I had selected the wrong node. It's pop source and constant activation. Put it right there. I'm sorry about that. You thinking of making a YouTube video? I might do some more tutorials. I have some ideas and stuff like that of things to cover. But yeah, I've been a bit busy just switching over the stream setup and then with other freelance projects and stuff. Shared Dropbox, every time you hit save, it goes in overwritten files. I think there's other ways to automate it. There's stuff I'm doing with Python scripts, even right now, that export stuff every so often. You might be able to even kind of hack it with like the autosave. Is that here? You might be able to do something with Python, but have it go to a website or a HTML address or something. Yeah, I don't know. It's never been too dry in terms of freelancing stuff for me, but I think it's just getting. Sometimes I like to take breaks or whatever. So I'm kind of doing that right now and rolling off of a project and just not going to book anything for a little bit. All right. So we have the particles. It's healthy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's nice, but it can be stressful just going from like crunch to complete freedom or whatever. But doing the stream and stuff is nice because you still have like a bit of a schedule to keep things going. Maybe just copy boxes to these. I think since you've been working for a while in the industry, I'd love to hear you interview other people in a podcast format. I don't know how good of a of an interviewer. I don't know how good of an Anderson Cooper, or maybe I don't know who of a Joe Rogan maybe. But yeah, it could be. I mean, I do have some good connections and stuff with people. I don't know how interested they'd be in doing it. I have thought about that stuff in the past before, but I am also just waiting a little bit more to just build this stream and stuff like that. I think like people will be more interested in coming to do interviews, like when I build more of a base of viewers or community or whatever, so that it's in their interest for them to get more exposure and stuff like that. There's already it seems like a lot of people are hopping on, but yeah, it's always been a little bit of a stress, like yeah, man, come on my stream, I want to talk and exposure, and then you just have like nobody viewing, and you're like, all right, well, that was fun, thanks for I don't know. But yeah, I've thought about that, or either there's other ways to open up the format eventually, like portfolio reviews or kind of Q&A, like working sessions where you're going into other people's files to give them tips or workflow reviews, or I don't know what you would call it, code reviews, like a scene review or something. You can also learn from those people yourself, right? Yeah, I mean, it's helpful, but usually if I'm doing that, I'll just talk to them off stream or whatever. Like, I don't know, it's a bit more easy to, I don't know. In a live context, people are usually a bit more like protected, or can be a bit more, I don't know, cautious about, like, they don't want to share the wrong advice, or they don't want to give up. Maybe they have their own secrets or something, but But yeah, it is valuable just in general to network, even for everyone. Hopping in DMs, comments. All right. So by default, these copies get oriented along the velocity vector of these particles. If I look here at these axes, you can kind of visualize the orientation that it's going to be. Isaac Tarak's not streaming. I think he is. I've tuned into a few of his streams. He's even been doing some interviews and stuff like that as well. I'm not sure if he's been archiving them, but if you look at the VODs and stuff, you should be able to see. He was doing an interview with someone a couple weeks ago that was pretty cool. It was like about YouTube or Instagram, like just presentation of work and portfolios and stuff like that. But yeah, if you search his name, I think he has a link tree or whatever on Instagram or Twitter that I think there's still a link to his Twitch. So this just uses velocity to decide where to point the copies. Yeah, the effects guided one is pretty good. There's a V-Ray one. I think it's called like CG Garage or something. Yeah, it's just by the Chaos group. There was one that was like from, it's not necessarily like, it was more just visual effects generalist, but there was one ILM one that was like, maybe just some old ILM veterans. Talking Bay 94. Maybe it's just Star Wars centric or whatever, but I think they do go over some VFX related stuff or whatever in that one as well. Flip normals gets a bit depressing. I used to listen to, I don't know, this was like 10 years ago or something, but the Blender people used to do, I think Flip normals is predominantly Blender, but like this was Blender developers that were doing a podcast. And I used to listen to that, but I didn't know as much, but it was usually just like devs getting frustrated about like people checking stuff into the code base. And it was just like them complaining about like bugs getting pushed into their branch or something. I was like, all right, this is not too useful for me. So by default, this will get velocity orientation, but like if I do pop wrangle, for example, and just set the normal direction explicitly, like set this maybe just +1 for X. It looks like these are still updating. So maybe if I delete the velocity, it would know to use that. Let me just inspect it. Yeah. So now everything is just explicitly using the direction. I'm gonna try something with the pop look at. So I think this one uses quaternions, and it will actually kind of do a better job as like describing the rotations as a vector for quaternion instead of just a single direction. It's like an axis and up vector, whatever you can prevent flipping and stuff that you get if you're just doing a single direction. Spamming petitions. Yeah, you don't need to worry too much. I'm planning to build things out eventually. But yeah, I mean, the more that this community grows, or the more that kind of stuff happens, the easier it should be to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think I also as well just need to spend time networking. Like, it's kind of all just related. It's all one Zen flow. If I started like having more guests and stuff on here, it just does a better job as well for my behalf of appearing elsewhere. So this look at, by default, you just give it specific parameters. But I think with this, again, I can just do inputs, kind of like I was doing pop advect by volumes to get the velocity. Here, for example, I could do maybe input 1 is dop data. You would do smoke object 1 / vel to get the velocity. And then using the vex expressions, you can apply that or use that information. So maybe this target direction, just set that equal to volume sample v for vector. And then for these arguments, you just do 0, because this is in the primary input, or the first slot. And then vel for the name of the field or volume. And then the sample position is just the current position of the particles. You could see even doing that, it already updated the alignment a little bit. Yeah. You could do rotations as well. I mean, if you just want general rotations, like you just usually do spin instead. So over time, the spin speed is like, I think in seconds, so it usually needs to be a bit higher than you expect. And then by default, these will all just use this one axis. Let me try this. So it looks like they're going maybe that way. They have the orient, sometimes as well, just doing boxes. Yeah, I don't know, that display viz is a little bit too complicated sometimes. Sometimes I'll just do like a box, but then poly extrude. Set this to individual elements, and then you just get like a bunch of pluses, essentially. If you want them even smaller, thinner, or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes that's a more useful way. And as well, if you're just testing stuff, you could go with a less amount. And sometimes that's easier to see as well. Okay, so it looks like everything is rotating in this direction, like top down with the pop spin. Hellraiser. Yeah, it is kind of like the cover of that movie. I don't know the character's name. It's like a pin cushion. So yeah, if you want to spin them, you can spin them like that. I think you could override this axis in the same way. If I just copy this dop data smoke objects 1 val. And then instead of here doing target sampling that, if I just do axis, set that equal to it, you might want to normalize it in this case, just to make sure it's like a unit length. That will decouple basically. Just treat it purely as a direction. If the length or the strength of this velocity is changing, then that will like kind of mess up your speed. It's basically just like changing too much stuff at once, kind of. So it looks like it's going kind of with the velocity now. It's pretty cool. Yes, I think this spin speed, I'm not exactly sure. You might want to look it up, but it might be like degrees per second. And yeah, again, it depends on like this, like the length. That's why I normalize this. So if I did multiply this like by 100, I think that's really like messing up the spin speed as well. So normalize it will just take one kind of factor out of the equation. Like you don't have to worry about the speed of the velocity changing your spin speed. If you want to, you could do it based off of that. But yeah, I might switch this, just start with this one again. So these things should be immediate, just means like update automatically, don't do any blending. Sometimes I do the spin. So this adds forces to try to align the particles in the direction you want them to go in, but is a bit more interesting because it's like more dynamic, because you're adding like forces to move things in a certain direction instead of just overriding them explicitly and saying like change this direction on this current frame. It looks a little slow. I might just increase that. So I'm just going to go back to regular boxes. And then just add more of them. You should be able to see here. Kind of looks like they're still aligning, like rotating to align with the velocities. Maybe I'm just going to keep adding more. So I packed the geometry before copying it, so that will let me kind of just do as many as I want without slowing things down too much. Whoops. So if I really want to create a lot of boxes, it will still display pretty quickly because I'm up here just doing the pack. You can as well set it on the copy set, pack an instance. But again, this is just something that I prefer to do, like visually, you just see the chain of events a bit more clearly instead of like relying on parameters. So I don't know, at this alignment here, I'm kind of questioning it a little bit. I don't know if my update method is, maybe I want to normalize this. And I think up here, instead of target as point, you want this to be a direction. So target and point, it's like trying to look at a pointed 3D space. Direction is more of like how the velocity vector works. I might try bringing this value down a little bit. Sometimes as well, if you just do the scale in like one, make them more into lines or something like that, instead of uniformly like a box, just stretch it out, make it a rectangle. Then you can like visually see the directions or the orientation a little bit better. I don't know, it's still a little bit suspect. Trying to see more of like the rolling, peeling motion as this ring expands or whatever. Let's just try a bigger value maybe. You could always just maybe go back to immediate for testing. So this definitely seems to be what I want. Like you can see the flow. Direction from how these are aligned. Let's try going back to spin. I think it's working. At least it looks a bit more interesting, and then it's just stable, like it won't flicker between frames. This is why I didn't want to do immediate. Like immediate, sometimes it can jitter, like if the values are changing too quickly. This has a bit of a delay to it. All right. I might add some more turbulence. Just try to break up. The mushrooms here are too perfect of a shape. We'd go smaller swirl size, more turbulence. This is pretty cool. Whoa. All right. So I think I'm just gonna go inside of here, turn that junk off. Try to visualize just the smoke to make sure it's not like an issue with the advection, but overall things look still way too like uniform. This is like too much breakup. This might still be too much breakup. It's like a delicate balance. You just want like enough to kind of split up the pressure fronts, but not too much that it's like swirling stuff around forever. You can also, I think, maybe play around with this influence threshold. So this is the cutoff of like density value that you're going to inject turbulence into. So if I make this a higher value at this thinner areas of smoke, it will no longer apply turbulence once the density is beneath the threshold. So that can help you like organize your turbulence a bit more. So like this, before this thin stuff was still spinning around forever. Is this a situation where you could use the pressure field to disturb the leading edge? You could. I think for this it's not as important because the end result here is going to be applied to particles. So you don't necessarily need to use the pressure field to do it. Like people use the pressure field because they're looking at the smoke and they want it to look kind of like pyroclastic. I would say here, like, if you really wanted to, you could just add disturbance everywhere. So going to OpenCL and then going to block-based. Just make the block size something close to your division size. This is like twice as much as the division size right now. I would say for this, you don't need to be as careful with adding, like where you're adding disturbance. You can just add it everywhere and get a very interesting breakup, or even just less strength to do a little bit of it. But yeah, I would think for this kind of stuff, you don't need to worry too much about like, because my end result is just going to be these particles that I'm copying the shapes to. I don't need to worry as much about like where specifically I'm adding the disturbance. Yeah, I think for this, I mean, I'm just trying to work as quickly as possible. I'm not too worried about like dialing it in precisely to be like visually the precise areas. Because everything is already looking like very blocky because you're copying boxes to it anyways. But if you're looking at the smoke, for sure, this would be a bit ugly because it's like going to be making little kind of crosses or blocks everywhere or whatever. But yeah, I think just in this case, you can be a bit kind of lazier or whatever with it. I might try. Maybe you do. So you can as well adjust the scale of these shapes with a attribute. So if I do vector scale, you have it set to like 2, 1, and 1. You can stretch out basically things in one direction more so than others. So I think if I go like along the z-axis, that should be the direction that like they're heading in. I don't know, it's possible that disturbance could, I might turn it off completely again. All right. So I was thinking maybe adjusting some of these parameters like based off of the speed or the length of the velocity. But I don't know, maybe just like the whole thing. I mean, I'm kind of just getting to a point where I could have just used P-scale instead. Basically now the faster moving boxes will be bigger than the smaller ones. Very Instagrammy style. And then I think the turbulence is still a little too much. Could do higher threshold. Replace each box with the Lambo. The Lambo bomb. I'm just going to reduce the scale. It's like a Lambo fractal. The burnout smoke effect is actually more little Lamborghinis, and then all of those all have their own. But yeah, and then you just keep zooming in on recursive Lamborghini copies. So I might even take this. I don't know. Kind of at a weird, like I don't want to, thinking maybe I don't want to break up these things too much because I want this collision shape to be like closer to symmetrical. So if you don't want stuff as strong, you could reduce the amount of time you're shooting the jets or emitting for. This could be quite nice. So if you want to color these, I'm gonna add the color inside of here because I want to differentiate them based off of their position. So I think I can just do pop wrangle. Then just set one of these maybe just if the X position is greater than 0.5. Somehow it's setting everything to 1. Oh, I think I see what I did. I forgot to add this set. Got him. So the value isn't sticking to these every frame. Like it's updating or it's overwriting it every frame. So you could just do group, and then on the source, the just born group, this is like your creation frame or creation. It only exists on the frame that the particles are created. So if I only make this assignment, it should stick. This is basically only setting the color when they're created now. Maybe having them kind of like flat little panels. Get some interesting stuff happening here. Smoke collisions? Yeah, it's based off of the mixing experiments I was doing earlier today, this morning. But instead of just pushing the resolution and visualizing the smoke, I've put particles through, or added them to this simulation. So all the pyro stuff is happening up here, and then just emitting particles and moving them using the velocity, and rotating or aligning them using the velocity as well. Looks like you could see maybe some edges of the container. So I think sometimes I'll do just like the object merge, get the DOPNet, the density. So this would get like the smoke. And then if you just do volume bound, you'll get like a bounding box. It's basically just a hack to visualize the domain. So you could make things a little bit bigger, just to make sure we don't see the edges. This might slow things down a little bit too much. Yeah, I don't know, it's not terrible. I might just go up higher division size just to work more quickly for right now. This is actually a little bit more interesting. I don't know. So I was gonna try adding the spin back in, seeing what happened with that. It could be that the two of these are fighting each other. Like this is trying to realign things, and then this is trying to spin. Waka flocking. I've never heard of waka flocking. It's like the rapper. I know the Boyd's, the general, is waka is like a species of bird. Maybe this axis should be Z. I don't know if that... Yeah, I don't know about the spin. Might go back to this. That seems a little bit too laggy. This is what I was talking about earlier with like, basically the higher you set these, the more quickly it will align to the velocity direction. So yeah, the turbulence, just having too much of it seems to mess up like the composition or the structure of things too much. And then I guess you just play around with the seed to get like interesting, this is just different positions or different results of the turbulence. So just changing the noise, you can get endless compositions or distributions. I'm just trying to find something that like results in an interesting mixture. This one seems a bit weird. Possible through particle sim or just p-scale radius. Too costly time-wise. Yeah, I mean, you can do stuff. So you could do something like post-sim to only limit the amount of scaling so that they don't penetrate each other. Like you could find nearby particles. But yeah, I would think RBD would be the quickest to get like precise. You'd have to move the p-scale or the scaling to be happening during the simulation. Some of the quickest stuff would be like either adding the pop grains to do the particle separation. You could do as well the gas particle separate. Somewhere you need to add p-scale to your attributes to get that to work, but I think for what I'm doing here, I might just leave them. I don't know, the other thing you might want to try is maybe like they can overlap each other, but not the other ones. But I think for this right now, I'm just going to leave them overlapping. I think if I add too much collision solving, it might break up like too much of the smooth like blending of of rotations of like the other ones. Like you'll get a lot busier, like jagged edges or whatever. It might be too time consuming, or I'm just too lazy to to pursue it right now. With so many objects you won't see. Yeah, I think that's part of it, and then also like lighting, like depending on how you light it or stuff like that. Like even if you just do ambient occlusion or something, it could be interesting. But yeah, especially if you zoom out or whatever. P-scale global, or just a popular name. It's like built in somewhat, so it stands for particle scale. It's basically a side effects like naming convention. So all of the nodes are built in to use it. So I think, for example, this pop property, it has a uniform scale, but if I hover over it, you can see its name is p-scale. And like if you double click on it, it's like hardwired here to set p-scale. So everyone uses it because they're basically adhering to the naming conventions. Yeah, so it's kind of built in. With Houdini, you can always go like off the path if you want, and you could build your own p-scale, set your own parameter. It's just how much freedom you want. Like you could write your own solver, you could do everything in yourself, but yeah, people are using p-scale. It's just because they're sticking with it. And then up here as well, like if you press the D key, go to disks, and you'll visualize here the p-scale in the viewport. So it's basically what Houdini is expecting it to be, or the kind of the path of least resistance or whatever. All right, we're back. So yeah, maybe more, maybe a bit more, maybe a few more particles. How do you write a node of your own? So I mean, the easiest way is doing this wrangle stuff. You're writing Vex code that is just the node will run your custom code here, your custom code snippet. Wrangle is kind of similar to C. It's not the same thing as C. If you want to use C, you just do the HDK with Houdini. You have to compile this for different platforms and stuff like that, so it's a bit of people don't use it as much, but you can write your own nodes with Visual Studio or whatever doing this. But yeah, you need to compile them. Like you need to reboot Houdini each time you change the node. So this is really nice because it compiles on the fly or like at runtime or whatever. So just for artists or whatever, it's a lot more interactive and stuff like that. But yeah, Vex Wrangle is based off of RSL, like the RenderMan shading language. So it's more like shader code, or it's a little less scary than C or C++. Attaching scale to velocity, some negative exponential. So like a very big. Could I use C#? I don't know. I don't know enough about all the C's to to advise. I would advise against it. Yeah, the negative. So you could do. You're thinking like power -1, like that. Oof. This could be too much. Uh-oh. It'll start really big. Yeah, I think you're saying maybe do a power of -1 raised to the speed. I see people do this for like lighting attenuation or glows and stuff, but I never, I always trip myself up when I try to do it. This is pretty cool. What's going on in here? Whoa. Yeah, I don't know if I have this right. Sometimes I'll just do this raised to an exponent. I think if your speed goes above 1, you'll get into like really big numbers here, so it can become a bit harder to control. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm just not, my math is a bit rusty. Pick up a brush and paint, and then yeah, I don't know. It can be more relaxing sometimes to just Bob Ross yourself. Ignore the, it's easy, I don't know, it's easy with 3D, all the different apps and stuff to get lost in the learning process or like the technical process or whatever. For if you're just getting into Houdini or whatever, I would think I wouldn't go this wild with like the different solvers and stuff I'm doing. I would just do like simpler tasks and stuff like that. But I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm just kind of doing it to keep it more interesting or like more exploratory or whatever to keep it more interesting for me. Yeah, I don't know. I might just leave this where it was. I'm gonna try to go a bit more quickly. Desmos graphic calculator and test some functions. Yeah, there's other ones that there's one that I usually use. I think the Inigo Quiles. He made the graph toy. The hell? Yeah, this is a good one to use. I like it because you can like create a HTML link with your function embedded in it. But yeah, I think you could do like, I don't know his syntax here for I don't know his syntax for power, if it's just the caret. X raised to -1. -1 to X. Yeah, this is the link right there. Trying to look where his exponent. Oh, I guess it's exp. power. Just look at the same as vex. Yeah, feel free to post any link you find relevant or helpful. So -1 to the power of x. I don't know where it went. Maybe this needs to be a float. So yeah, maybe I wanted to do like x raised to -1. Maybe -x. Flip it around. Negatives everywhere. Hold on. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not, this is some wizardry I'm not prepared to perform. Do an absolute. Should the absolute here? So I think sometimes people do that. I don't know, to like shift stuff over so that is the velocity. Power of absolute x -0.5. Play with negative exponent to shape. Yeah, I think I'm trying to find something that maybe like 1 divided by. I think this is what I was usually doing. This is more like lighting attenuation. I don't know if you do it with a negative number. I don't know. There was like something I was doing that was like 1 divided by. I don't know. I'm messing it all up. There was basically usually I would search. This would be like the quadratic decay function for lighting. And I would try to make a graph. Maybe your functions are the same results or similar follow-ups. But yeah, I'm gonna start moving into some rendering, that kind of stuff. Just get this scene saved. What is this? We're almost at the end of September. 25th. All right. So I'm just gonna do a file cache. Sometimes what I'll do here is just keep more particles than I need. And then if you want to, you can always like, after the cache, remove particles if you want less of them, or do stuff like that. You could clean up the attributes, save some space. It's a good habit to usually do that. So I want to keep color just so I know which is which. I could always make a group or like reassign it. I need velocity, age, dead, its previous life. Those aren't super important. Name, previous, the source, spin, resist. Sometimes it's easier to go this way of just keeping what you need. So I'm gonna keep P. Someone was posting that earlier. It was their girlfriend's song they made. I'm gonna keep P, color, orient. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out after the, it's gonna blow my mind. ID. And then I still need velocity. I think that's all. That's the only stuff I need. Node, it was Node Genome that posted it. I use attribute rename instead of attribute delete. So the attribute rename is a newer node that is just like a convenience tool that they added. If you go inside of it, all that it is the attribute rename inside of it. If I can, I'll try not to use these digital assets. So like if you middle mouse button on something that isn't a digital asset, you can see how long it takes to process the geometry. If it is a digital asset, they don't have a good method to collect everything inside of it. So this cook time isn't as trustworthy for subnetworks in general. So that's why I'm doing it this way usually, and then I've just been used to this node. I don't know why they made like a wrapper for it, but it's just whatever you want to use is up to you. It's kind of a just an old man workflow or whatever. All right, so this, I mean, as well, you can do it on here using the save filter. So if you look inside of the file cache, you'll see they have the attribute rename as well. There's many ways to do the same thing. This will be particle. Then I usually just do like a version number. So my file caches have the directory. Yeah, of course, CG Rockstar. So I usually just do the version number like as part of the node name. So then when it creates the directory, it will append the same version number. We just do this, save it. Good to go. See how long we can make our file dialog. All right, we're good. So just make sure this load from disk is turned on. Should be able to visualize stuff pretty quickly. So I'm just doing this, now I can more easily move to like rendering or all that stuff. 3:30 a.m. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good evening, good night. I'm just trying to find some interesting area of the simulation. You can do the time blend. I guess you could even do this after you've copied everything. I don't think it matters too much. But yeah, this is super useful. Super powerful for Houdini. Just make your kind of time ramps or whatever really quickly. I'm just setting some keyframes. Maybe I'm gonna do this up here so I can like visualize it before the copy. And if you just do shift and click, you can adjust your tangents or whatever. I think I want this stuff to be going, my in and out points to be moving or accelerating pretty quickly. And then just for a speed ramp or whatever, this is like bullet time matrix kind of business, flattening out in the middle. Everything is super slow. I think I just need more. A bit more range. Vegan nuts, what's good? We're just doing some smoke pushing points around. Time blend to time shift trick. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, I feel like it's a bit harder to do in other software packages. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like other software users usually have, like, their mind is blown when they're like, oh man, you can just retime anything that easily. Like I think with the Maya, Maya has like Nucleus that does their solvers, or maybe it changed with Bifrost, but I think generally you have to do like more planning or different caching styles or whatever, but Houdini is pretty flexible. So yeah, I'm just looking for like an interesting area of things now. Maybe this area right here, just do control click on the camera to make the camera shelf tool to make a camera. So I'm using just the spotlight light that I put in to illuminate the pyro smoke, but I might go in and change it. Mesmerizing. All right. I don't know why this stuff is so slow. You'd think it's like should be a little bit faster. I'm doing the packing. It's not super slow, but like it would be nicer to be a little bit closer to real time or whatever. You could always try just doing like a grid. Sometimes it's just a faster way to visualize stuff. You get the confetti. Yeah, I don't know, it still seems a little slow. Might be the time blend stuff. This the grid is a little bit faster for me at least. All right, I'm gonna move into some rendering Redshift business. Just do instancing and make sure you do the SOP level packed primitives. Otherwise, the Redshift doesn't know to like how to treat the packed primitives when it renders them. You get mind blown when you're working with simple particles. So I might get rid of the spotlight now, move into the Redshift lighting. Sometimes it's simplicity is best. You just only work with particles. You can make really cool stuff. Gonna do Redshift. Make the Redshift light. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of it I think is just like speed of working. You can definitely make really mesmerizing and cool volumes, but then to tweak and like iterate on such, you need a ton of detail with it. Seems like particles you can get away with less data and they'll still look really cool. Let's just see what happens. Look at that. Final. So let's just go to the out. Is this OBS dropping? It's dropping some frames. Yeah, and then it would, I see a lot of people doing web stuff, like, forget the 3D library that everybody uses. It's like WebGL or different stuff like that, but, yeah, if only, I have the capture card, it's just the cable. It might have been delivered, I don't know, it said it was coming today, but tomorrow it hopefully will be pristine, top tier quality. But yeah, like there's some WebGL stuff, like so if you're doing real-time stuff for the Google Chrome, like volumes or even games, volumes are too much to work with in real time. So see a lot of really nice 3JS, yeah. So doing you can make really cool like particle simulations, and then it's light enough that it's just like a super lightweight cache that's quick to work with or to read. All right. Let's try to get more of a rim. Mr. Doob, another demo maker. Yeah, I was watching Evil on here on Twitch. He does some pretty cool streams. Ah, he's a friend of yours. Yeah, I think I was telling him I'd do like visual effects or something, but he was like, I only care about real time. He didn't care too much about like people doing 3D offline rendering. But I get kind of where he's coming from. Is just like working on demos. Like you get such everything's like instant feedback, so it's really fun to develop those. It's usually like never, I don't know, doing heavy simulations and then offline rendering like can take a day before you see the changes of the results you did or whatever, so it can get pretty frustrating. But that's why I've switched to Redshift, and maybe Redshift real time like eventually will be it's also done Cinema and Houdini, just not on stream with Evil. I think part of it too is like for demos, if it's on your own time, like you want to challenge yourself and get really fancy, the gang into 25 minute. You've done some competitions with like the split screens. Evil said he had some trophies from doing the 25. He's like, I think he was saying he's the 25-minute champion. He was saying he's the best at it, or maybe he was just talking shit. He beat you twice. But yeah, I was talking to him about that inverse power business. He was explaining how he was doing the glows. It was a similar equation of that. I just haven't studied it enough to do it today. So I was getting an interesting shadow. Like I'm trying to get, I don't know if it was like from the top. There's one of these positions I was getting like a nice swath of darkness across the middle of the screen. Ah, this is all your demos? Yeah, these are really cool. I love the, this is like an inverted hypercube kind of thing or something. You're just flipping the, I don't know the terminology. I don't know the scene. Basically anything that's like written with code for real time with like your own engine, I refer to it as a demo, but I'm probably not saying it like I basically refer to anything that's a shader as a demo, but I think I'm not using the proper terminology. Yeah, with Redshift, they're developing OSL, so that's basically just, it's kind of like Vex, but cross-platform. So you write any OSL code, and it will work for Arnold or any renderer that supports OSL. Mantra supports OSL. So basically it's very similar to Vex, but it will work with any render engine. So it becomes a little bit more handy because like your procedural noises or anything like that become cross-platform for renderers. But you can even do crazy like fractals with OSL. Like with the current Redshift nodes, you don't have a ton of capability for making like procedural functions or stuff. You basically can do the noises that they let you use with the RS noise or Maxon noise nodes. But then beyond that, you're pretty much stuck. So OSL, you can just write your own material functions, like anything like that, and you have a ton of flexibility. Yeah, it should be pretty cool. Like just extra little things you can, with that little bit of like freedom or whatever, you can make a lot of interesting stuff. So I think this, I don't know, this is starting to be pretty interesting. Where did this? I'm losing track of too much stuff going on. Need to give you a follow here, Alkama. I'm gonna check out more of that stuff later on. All right. So I was just trying a different frame here to see how it looked over time. I think just do live SOP level updates. So this every frame will update your stuff more properly. Yeah, I've always been really interested. I go to the one forums, or I used to go there more often or whatever. The Poot, P-O-U-E-T. I don't know the proper. It's like a onomatopoeia kind of thing or something. But yeah, just as a viewer or a fan of the demo scene or that stuff is cool to watch. There's also Flapping. She's making some pretty cool, like, minimal. Yeah, that's the one that I was looking at, the Poot.net. But yeah, Flapping is making some interesting kind of minimal shaders, just like two-dimensional, like geometric shapes or whatever recently that was interesting. So just assign the shader to the geometry. Get the color. This point attribute, set in the color. You just have to usually refresh this. Can I suggest a project? Yeah, I mean, I already have a list of some things that I've been meaning to cover. But yeah, it becomes easier for me to keep track of this if you just post it in the suggestions channel of the Discord. But yeah, there's some magical effects or whatever I have like on my list of things to do. LJ, yeah, I was following LJ I think as well. Somehow I got into that, stumbled into that group of people. So this color, I just didn't name the attribute properly. So I think it was just using black everywhere because it couldn't find the default attribute. All right, it's working. Just add a bit of that specular roughness or whatever. I still don't know about this lighting. I think it's cooler to see some highlights on the tips of these boards, the planes or whatever. Then I think overall just this light is a bit too, it's overexposed. You maybe a smaller size. It's a bit cleaner. All right. So I'm just gonna update the colors. This is kind of like debugging colors that I set earlier, just for something. But now if I actually want to color them, I think do looking at the Y component. If it's greater than 0.5, change the color. Oof, maybe it was the X. I think I just needed to change that to points. All right. So this is going to update one of the colors. Could go like red, orange. And then if I just do another color before that, this will make sure I'm setting the other thing. I don't know, maybe I can't do it that way. So I'm already messing up this group. So I'm just going to do group just gonna say this is emit, like the one emitter. Oh dear, I've really messed it up now. Okay, so I think here, it's working. Yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't showing up earlier. All right. So basically, I just quickly assign those colors to keep track of which was which, but now I'm setting it up so I can control them again or whatever after the simulation. These shapes could be a bit nicer, I think, maybe if we do like, because we're doing instances, I can add some bevels or smoothing to make the corners and things look a bit better. You could as well do that kind of stuff in the shader, like the rounded edge redshift stuff, but because I'm already set up to do instancing, I think it kind of makes sense to just set it up here. Usually I'll add the normal node or whatever to make sure that those things are set nicely. And see like it fix that shading issue or whatever. We just have that pill, I don't know, smooth shape or whatever. Take a look. Does camera get messed up? Sometimes the redshift render gets confused. Maybe, I guess I was just zoomed in. So these things might be a little too rounded. Stiffen it up a little bit. Long chiclets. This could be like a Trident. It's a gum commercial or candy commercial. But yeah, I usually think, especially with like the specular highlights, adding the bit of like rounding or smooth edges, like it just makes things look a little bit more real. Could add the, the nice thing about this time blend is that it adds subframe interpolation. So if I go up here and just go to my render settings, the instances here are enabled for motion blur, like subframe sampling kind of. So if I go to my redshift renderer, I should be all set to just toggle on or enable motion blur. I think just instances as well here, and could try it. It needs velocity? I don't think it does, right? I think it depends how you have it set up, but by default, like if your topology is not changing, like you're not creating or destroying particles over time, it can just compare the previous and next positions and derive the motion from those two positions. But yeah, this is starting to look pretty cool. Could go play around with the tone mapping stuff. Just really use all the bells and whistles. Turn on the depth of field. My redshift is like shitting the bed right now. I might try get out of this square format for right now. Maybe do like a anamorphic kind of resolution. Ultra wide. And then just on the sampling here, reduce the f-stop. Messing with roughness or normals at the texture pixel level could be fun. Random roughness per particle. Yeah, I've done some stuff like that as well. I think you could do like a rest position here for this, or even add like UVs or things like that to have it stick to things. So I guess adding it at the pixel level, you're almost adding like film grain effect. I'm kind of thinking maybe like just some smudges, like surface smudges or stuff like that could be cool. Maybe just this rest. Let me see if it works. But yeah, I think I've gone way too small on the f-stop. It was like a wild lens. This is a bit more manageable. Rusty blades. For whatever reason, these camera parameters, they don't always seem to update super quickly. I need to update the renderer to see the changes. All right. I'm just trying like a wider lens here. Just going fancy with the the saturation. Ultra luxury. So I'm trying to find a good frame now to dial in or adjust some of those shader settings. I guess I could as well just disable this depth and motion blur. So I don't know if the this looks pretty clean as well. So color splotch here worked out really good as like a focal point. I don't know if I can read the rest attribute directly. Let me just see what happens. Because it's basically like a packed attribute. Like I assigned the rest before I packed the geometry, and then the color got assigned after. So yeah, it looks like it didn't pick it up. Let me just see if it knows enough do the max on noise. So this, like you could do the UV or vertex attribute rest. It looks like it's picking it up here because all of the noises, the results are the same. The reason I'm not doing object is because I think if I do object space noise, like that will swim. Maybe with packed geometry, it's smart enough to know like to use the transform before it is packed. If you do like world, then definitely that could be the wrong space. Like this texture, this pattern would be stuck and these would move through it. You'd do maybe interesting like atmosphere effect with it, like it's going through murky water or something. But for smudges on the plastic, it might not be as good. I'll just go back. Just try object for now. These max on noises are pretty handy. It's like it's max on redshift, so you're able to use like all the noises that Cinema 4D has, but inside of Redshift or inside of Houdini now. This is pretty cool. So maybe the white area is gonna be rough, specular. We'll just do the change range. So I'm gonna think black is like perfectly smooth. Not perfectly smooth, but relatively smooth. It's cheating. Yeah, you guys used to having to like code your own function. Sometimes I see people not even wanting to use FBM. They just use like a single sine wave for, or a couple hand layering the sine wave octaves themselves. Let's add some more complexity. Just increase octaves and I think the gain kind of works the other way. Like the lower it is, the more you see the extra octaves. Yeah, I was doing some Redshift programming stuff one time, and or not Redshift, Unreal, and it was for VR, so I had to be careful about like my like I didn't want to use too expensive of a noise, but I think I did a for loop that was stacking like 12 sine functions, but even that was too slow for, it was like a material function inside of Unreal, but it was too slow for what we were working on. It's like hitting our 60 FPS. It was like, I guess for VR, you need to do two renders or two eyes at once. That's like a pretty high resolution, and then 60 FPS for both of those. So like you need to be really conservative with your shader luxuries. Lack of precision. Yeah, I see a lot of people doing that where they have like, they're just multiplying something by a really weird number to get like a hash or whatever. All right, so this white area is going to be like a smudge. I think I might want to change the frequency of things a little bit. Then my destination range, this is going to be like the actual roughness value. So maybe from like 0.2 to 0.6. This is going to be the reflection roughness. Let's take a look. Could try it without color or diffuse just to see what's going on. Interpolate between, I've never seen that part of it. But yeah, I've looked through a few of the shader toys that Inigo did that was his different noises and like random hash or hashing functions or whatever. Learning a lot from him. So I think everything maybe just a little bit rougher. Is a bit closer to what you were thinking. It's kind of like a rusty saw. So just like a bit of a physical. Maybe would the IOR just get closer to like a metal response? Shinier. Let's see what it looks like with the super subtle. Yeah, I think with, I guess it's, you can see it a little bit. I think it's still a little bit too obvious here. Look less plasticky. Maybe like a coat layer. But yeah, just reducing both of those. You're kind of getting back to a mirror or something. I think my source range might be a little too clamped. Filmic value, that's what it's all about. Just the cheap production value, add it all in at the last minute. Well, maybe this IOR is just a bit too reflective. I think that making it more like a paper or plastic, I'm gonna get more of a subtle response. Yeah, it's just all about those little hints of like motion blur, depth, variation of specular response. Especially if you're rendering stuff at like 4K, you just really get the photographic response. So I might, with my motion blur, I might do maybe with the shutter start and end. This is going to be closer to like a 90-degree shutter, or just like a sharper end result of a picture. So just a more subtle kind of motion blur or whatever. I guess if you're simulating, like right now I'm kind of still at 24 frames a second, but if you were at like 60 frames a second or something, you'd just expect like a sharper, I don't know, could make things look a little bit more video game-ish, polished. I'll just go back with the depth of field as well. Is the motion blur impacted by your time tweaking, or is that just for simulation that you twisted the time? The time twisting, I like that way of putting it. Like the remapping of time that I'm doing here is all post simulation. So it's basically the final step that I'm twisting it, and it should affect the motion blur. So up here on my settings, enable, I think it's not using the velocity attribute, it's actually using the change, positional change, or like deformation. Like I could get rid of that V attribute. I could turn off the depth of field as well, just to make sure. So I should still see some blurring. But yeah, it's basically should just be based off of like very close to how a camera works, like where these are moving over the duration of the shutter to add blur. Does this look like it's working? It might have been using the velocity. See it in real time. Yeah, it's sorry if you got in late, you haven't seen too much of what it was like. Let me, so I think I maybe need to do, so I feel like I've done this before with the deformation blur for packed primitives. Let me just check to see if I have my blur working. It's kind of hard for me to tell because I dialed everything down so much. Let me just go back. But yeah, so the sim is the motion of it is pretty similar to this kind of stuff where it was just two jets or two sources colliding with each other. This looks like I'm getting the motion blur now. Oof. Oof. But yeah, I'll do a play blast once I get the scene open again. All right. Yeah, so it's this is kind of like cameras cropped in on one of those areas. You can even like do some of that motion blur depth of field effects in your flipbook. Let's just see what it looks like. It kind of slows down the flipbooking process because those effects get this is just like brute force kind of multi-sampling. Like it's not doing any fancy tricks or whatever, but it can be a nice way to preview things a little bit more accurately. Like just as instead of doing a full render, if you just do a flipbook, you can you could just see where your focal plane is or see what your motion blur looks like. But yeah, I basically am zoomed in right now on one of the like collision features. I've retimed the simulation, and then I did the speed ramp is gonna go into like a bullet time. So as the colors or I've colored the two different sources of the pyro, two different colors, and then as they mix and intermingle or whatever, I'm trying to frame the camera on that event or that location. This motion blur business, I did too many bells and whistles. I'm just gonna go back to regular flipbooking. So yeah, as the frame gets to like halfway through the shot, like 5 seconds in, that's when the bullet time effect or whatever kind of really kicks in. Yeah, and then I was doing some trying to do some stuff with the velocity vectors of the fluid simulation to get these little planks or shapes or whatever aligning with them. Yeah, they're pretty cool, the ones that are by themselves but still like aligning. Like it's like it's very similar to flocking. Someone was talking about the waka flocking. These orange crew that pushes through is a really interesting moment. I think I got lucky with my camera framing to catch them like with the focal plane, the lighting. That would be pretty cool. This should be another minute or so to flipbook. I'm gonna get some water. I'll be right back. Thank you for that. Sorry about the muting. But yeah, the plank fish I finished. It's a pretty cool result. I think I got lucky with my camera framing and stuff like that. These guys are coming right up to the camera. Pretty cool composition. I could go into the redshift stuff. Actually go into a sequence or a shot. Replace the planks with fish. Then I have the waka flock. Yeah, there was one other idea. I don't have time for it right now, but you can always do the trail. And I guess my window got a little too wide. Like maybe doing a trail to build curves from the particles. You just add the particles based off of their ID, or add the polygons. And then maybe doing something with like the path deform. I don't know, I might have added too many. But yeah, this is kind of like a time lapse vibe or look. But yeah, and then doing maybe like path deform. Try maybe keeping just a few of the curves. But yeah, you could have really crazy motions and stuff. This guy on these curves. There he is. All right, and then I think you should do this as fraction of curve length. And then the scale of all of these are just way too big. Could be my capture direction is the wrong. And somehow these are reversed or flipped around or whatever. But yeah, I think like with this path deform stuff, you can get some interesting bending. So human fish. But yeah, I think I don't know how this would play in motion. Maybe doing less. Just gonna reconfigure these a little bit. Yeah, you get wild people really quickly. It's Friday night. The boys are out. I don't know if this will be consistent. I guess it looks like it is. Yeah, I feel like you could do some really interesting stuff with this as well, with putting the people. I don't know why they get reversed. Right? Then it looks like, oh, I guess they're like going the wrong way. They're like upside down. I've really messed it up now. All right. So yeah, I think I want to do negative scale so that they're pointing the right direction. We try a flipbook and just see what they look like. We quickly went on an acid trip here. But yeah, I think for any kind of animal, like you could kind of build out a flocking, interesting kind of thing or something like that. Blake Catherine, thank you for the raid. Got me back for once. I appreciate it. We're in the wild, deforming Houdini territory here. So I was doing this fluid simulation that I've put like boxes or planks onto. I was just messing around now, putting like the test geometry deforming onto it or whatever. But yeah, if anyone in here isn't familiar with Blake Catherine, she does really cool work with mostly humans, right? Or I guess you've been doing more still lifes recently. But yeah, cinema. You're using, I think, Redshift as well, but just everything in cinema, really good. I'm still trying to catch up on composition, lighting techniques, and stuff like that from her. I've been approaching Houdini from like a technical, very like scientific method or whatever. So I'm just now trying to move more in like a artistic, like develop my eye and stuff like that. So yeah, I've really enjoyed watching her streams of just seeing like what works better. Even your Photoshop stuff, I need to learn, build that out. Like everything I do, I waste a lot more time than I should on it. I think you could get really far with just the post process. But yeah, we're in the funky territory right now. So it's basically, instead of the planks, what I was doing quickly to test like if this could work for flocking animals or fish or something like that, I took just the default test geometry model and build curves or whatever with these things, and have these default humans or whatever rolling like along the motion paths or whatever of these particles. But yeah, I feel like you could get really quickly into the trippy, soft body territory with this kind of stuff, doing like Vellum or FEM sims that have the flesh wobbling around. I'm just gonna go back into the rigid planks. I was setting this up to do a render, kind of like anamorphic camera with Redshift. Beyond the Mind's Eye was one of the original 3D art vids. They had, was it Beyond the Mind's Eye, or there was one 3D like intro to like a museum or something I used to watch in science class. It would be like a 3D camera flying through a museum. There would be like a tiger walking out of a painting and really like intense music. It was like dun 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 dun. I don't remember it. It could have been Beyond the Mind's Eye. I don't remember though. All right. So yeah, I was just doing Redshift, tweaking the, messing around with the shaders a little bit earlier to add like a bit of noise or roughness throughout the surface, just like it's little splotches of light or something. All this pop flock. So I'm doing a fluid simulation. I was experimenting earlier today with more high resolution smoke, but basically I have a smoke pyro simulation in Houdini that's doing this kind of motion, just like two sources pointing at each other, colliding. And then these, I have particles that are moving like with the velocity of the pyro. And then they're also aligning or like moving in the same direction or rotated to point in the direction of the velocity. So that's how I'm getting that kind of effect. Like if you zoom out, this is kind of like one of those frames of the mixing stage, like everything has just hit each other. So it kind of is just that portion of things. And then I did do a retime or whatever after the fact. So this is my curve to get into like a bullet time, to like deaccelerate slow-mo. Umair, how's it going? Doing all right. I was working this week to get improve my streaming setup. I'm still waiting on a new cable so I can use like a capture card or whatever. So yeah, I'm instancing this plank shape. I think I might want to add like some more subdivisions or something to it. It looks like, I don't know, sometimes you get like a face or something that stretches super far and you get like a weird specular highlight on that area. Hey, Kira, how's it going? So maybe just add a few more layers of that sub D. You can also, sometimes I'll do this blur. It's just like a smooth, it's kind of wacky. Whoa. But yeah, I feel like just getting those super harsh edges is kind of like a mesh relaxation or whatever. Getting rid of the pinching or whatever. ASO. I don't know if I have that mode dialed in. All right. We turn GI back on. I disabled it. I was inspecting, like making sure that my motion blur was working properly. And then I also have depth of field. I just haven't switched it back on yet. Let's see what this looks like. So yeah, I think that extra layers of subdivision and blurring, I don't know. It's like super subtle, but you can get some better looking geometry edges. It's just a bit more super subtle, but can help like make things look realistic or whatever. And then again, super subtle, but I did vary the specular roughness, so the reflection roughness. So as these like hit the highlights or whatever, should just add a little bit of variation. So I'm gonna add back my camera depth of field, turn it back on. So I have my focal plane kind of where this red, or I guess orange splotch was like emerging from. Just have my redshift render here set up for the full 10-second frame range. Usually I'll just increase like the max samples so it can achieve this noise threshold. Hopefully it's not super slow. And usually on the depth of field, like if you reduce the aspect below 1, you can kind of widen the bokeh or the out of focus stuff. So kind of works the opposite, like the lower this number goes, the more you stretch stuff. So this was like 1, this out of frame, out of focus stuff is like uniformly blurred. So bringing this down to 0.7 should be like extra elongated, kind of like you're replicating an anamorphic lens or camera. You could even go really accentuated or whatever. And then the exponent, the power, sometimes I'll boost that up. That just kind of adds like contrast to the bokeh or the out of focus stuff. So boosting like the highlights, or making it just have more range, kind of. Finding Nemo palette. Yeah, it's kind of clownfish. It's also a bit of like the Houdini. Houdini has this wacky orange color. But yeah, I think it's cool. I didn't even think about that. It does have a bit of like reptile, not necessarily reptile, but just like creature skin, fish skin, or I guess like a poison frog or something kind of has that. All right. So I'm gonna try seeing how quickly I can blast a sequence, a frame range out. Maybe instead of going the full frame range, just start and end a bit sooner to try to start at a more interesting portion of things. I don't know, might be too slow to try to do it during the stream. Might just have to take my word for it with the flip book. Been trying to get Redshift RT or real time working. Once they release that, I feel like I can work more quickly. But yeah, I'm hoping to get some interesting shafts of light, like as this self-shadowing stuff. My light is kind of like up and to the left of everything. But yeah, as it like pokes through, hopefully should be getting like kind of some God rays or whatever. You can always add the redshift atmosphere, or like the scattering volume, whatever it's called, to get some God rays. All the bells and whistles happening. Let's just let this go like 3 or 4 frames. Looks fantastic. Thank you, Jabram. Yeah, it's a pretty good for where it is. I don't know about the lighting right now. Like it could just be everything. Like it'd be maybe adding like the gobo or the cucaloris. You guys ever? It's the Italian metaball. That's a spicy metaball with your cucaloris. The someone was talking about Italian metaballs earlier today. But yeah, basically the cucaloris is like on set or for actual photographers, they put this in front of the lights to have like it's going through like blinds or anything like that. But yeah, I think maybe adding like that kind of texture to my area light to break up these highlights or whatever. How long does it take for you to render animations like this? So it looks like it's maybe a minute or a minute and a half for a frame right now. I'm doing like 1920 by 600, and then I did increase the noise threshold, so it's like a bit low quality or whatever. So typically I would try to just work and have it finished within a day. Like a night or when I'm not using my computer essentially. So like within 12 hours and just try to find settings that will give me the results or whatever for that length of time. You can always, if you need, if you really need the speed, like just rendering it half res and then scaling in post, like maybe not even doing a pixel sample, like just double the scaling without any blurring to preserve the sharpness of the pixels. Just going half res, you'll render stuff 4 times as quickly because it's like a 2-dimensional thing or whatever. So as you increase, every time you double the resolution, your render time goes up by 4. So yeah, if I really wanted to make this go more quickly, I could go half res. American Gigolo poster? I haven't, did you talk about the Deuce Bigalow movie? Does it look like this? That's a Rob Schneider original right there, right? But yeah, I was thinking maybe just a gobo or something. A gobo is the other term for this kind of device. But yeah, just breaking up everything so it's not like all highlight. You kind of simulate it like it's the lights going through plants or leaves or trees or something like that. Could be cool. I'm just gonna bail out of this render for right now. It's kind of super slow. So yeah, just on this redshift node, like if you go to half, maybe quarter res for right now, you could turn off motion blur. Like that's one of the things for sure that slows down the render build or whatever, because it has to like, before it starts rendering, it has to do a few samples. Cool looking GIF. You got a loop. Yeah, for particles, looping I feel like is pretty easy if you just like offset everything by your timeline range and then play it again, so you have like 2 copies of your results that are playing. So as one portion finishes, the other one starts, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is always super mesmerizing. Increase the mesmerizing factor up to 12. So I'm just going to take a look at that light and try to, I actually have a little folder of cucalori. I don't know what the plural of that word is. So with Redshift, if you just add it as a texture, you can do it that way, or sometimes switching to spot. Let me try going to a spotlight. You just have to recalibrate your intensity or whatever. From area light to spotlight, it just handles it differently. And then texture. So yeah, I was just calling it gobo, but it's just a bunch of those little textures, like leaves. This is like stuff going through a window. It does look like it. So just usually try some of these out or whatever. So already you can see you get just interesting, kind of helps with the depth, I guess, or I don't know. Compositionally, you kind of break up the shapes a little bit better. Let's try some different ones. And then you can use the spotlight like cone angle. This is kind of just like scaling, shrinking or expanding the texture. The wider your cone angle, the bigger kind of the projected shadows or whatever will be. I'm trying to get this orange splotch kind of illuminated while the rest of it is a little bit more patchy. All right, so with these quicker render settings, I went quarter res, turned off motion blur. We should be able to blast through like a lot more frames, more quickly or whatever. See what happens. Let's take a look at this poster. Oh yes, the effect. The Cucullorus. Yeah, so that's a pretty cool lighting technique, just to break up your I don't know, the CG and area lights or whatever. Everything just looks like too geometric or too crisp or whatever. So get some cool ones. I think in the Arnold docs they call it a gobo, but I think they give you some textures. Like you can use them with other software packages or whatever, even to fake water caustics. If you just project, it's kind of like a texture projection or whatever, but yeah, basically the black areas are like simulating a shadow. Yeah, I feel like with lighting, it's just the super simple things that you never really think about, like I don't know, it's easy to forget that you can do that technique as like a possibility or whatever. So like just adding the bounce card to reflect some GI light back on, like I've already forgotten to do that today. Animating your lights, like that's always a super simple thing, but can add a lot of like production value if you just swing, like rotate something around or whatever. Looks like maybe the problem with doing a spotlight is that all the shadows cast by these planks is going to be super harsh or flickery. Kira, thank you for the bits. I appreciate it. Yeah, I might want to go back to the reason I switched to a spotlight is the spotlight, when you project with a gobo, preserves the texture, like projects it kind of very crisp one-to-one. If this was a grid light that was projecting the pattern, it wouldn't be as contrasty, or wouldn't the definition of it wouldn't be as sharp. But if you want to soften everything, you just go for the area light. this anamorphic bokeh that I did, you can see the shape there. Instead of being a circle, like out of focus or whatever, you just get those kind of dreamy, it's like anamorphic lens or whatever. Super abstract. Yeah, I don't know, it's a bit frustrating. It seems like with Redshift, it's just super slow right now to build the scene. Share the website with the gobos? Yeah, there wasn't, there's this Arnold documentation one. There isn't necessarily a go-to source, like where I just pulled mine from doing Google search. Either Gobos or Cucaloris. And then these are actually like product or manufacturer like examples of the pattern. Like you could order this for actual photography, but I've found you can usually, like you could crop these and do it. And then I think even if you're familiar with like Substance Designer or just whatever software you're using, like you can just make super super simple scenes like with an instancer or scatter shapes onto a grid and then render it from like an orthographic camera and make some interesting ones. This one's a pretty like psychedelic thing or whatever. But yeah, there is a few that the Arnold documentation links to. You can generate some caustic style ones. And then even, I don't know, your logo or whatever, whatever image, I guess just take some funny ones as well and color correct it or stick it in there. So yeah, I don't know with Redshift, maybe if I don't do as many subdivisions on these shapes, I can have them the like extract proxy procedural objects stage should be a little bit faster. Packs for the trees. Yeah, what I would be really interested in is like some nice ones for light coming in through a window with really subtle like wind blowing through the trees. That to me is the hardest thing to find or even to simulate. It's just like a real subtle kind of like luminance or intensity variation, but getting it just really trial and error to like nail it and really have it feeling realistic. Because these, if your scene is pretty static or you're doing like a still life and then you have like a static gobo or a single texture, everything can start to feel like really lifeless pretty quickly. I'm just gonna go back to the area light. And then I'm gonna go to my geometry here and maybe turn off some of the smoothing and subdivisions and stuff. I'm just gonna try to see if I can get the renderer to be more responsive. I think I forgot to do something. I don't know. Should be working. I don't know, something I did it wasn't happy with. Let's try this. Oh, I think I know it. So I think when I switched back to the area light, my intensity was still like where spotlight was. All right. But yeah, just going back to an area light, it's still using the texture of the gobo or whatever, but now I can just get a little bit softer shadows, like when these paths go over each other or whatever. I think Redshift is really nice as well because you can do color corrections kind of on the, not really color corrections, but just adjust the gamma of the gobo or stuff and really like pull out the definition of it. Distance of gobo to light may help to adjust the shadows as well. Yeah, I think unfortunately, like doing it this way with the texture projection, you can't decouple like the distance of the gobo to the light. If you really want to, like I've done it sometimes, is building it out as you can build like a physical card and put it in front of the light and simulate it that way, and then you have control over the distance, and then that does affect the blurriness or sharpness of it. But yeah, I think as like you don't necessarily have control over the over that. Yeah, it could be a custom asset. I'm just trying to pull out a little bit more yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick with the spotlight. It just seems like with the area light, you don't have as much control over the like I didn't have the cone angle control anymore for the spread of things, so it wasn't as easy to dial that. All right. So I should be able to go back into my geometry, turn off some of the extra bells and whistles, the extra nonsense I was doing. Then this should render even quicker than before. Yeah, I don't know, it just seems like it's taking a while for Redshift to actually like load all the instances or whatever. Wah, wah, wah. It's like the renders quicker than the actual like extraction scene build stage or whatever. I think it might just be the amount of instances or packed primitives or whatever that I'm doing. This is also like the color scheme of what is it? Those ice creams? Like a creamsicle? The orange ones? Push pops. I was thinking about these because it has the white, like underneath, like as you bite into it, you see the white mixed with this one, the bite missing. It's kind of like the mixture of colors or whatever. So every stream I do, it just always turns into something sugary. But yeah, it looks like this preview speed is closer to it's like we're getting 4 frames per minute now or something. Um, it, the next thing I would do to optimize this is like cropping the ones that, like only keeping the ones that are within the view of the camera. This is probably the last thing I'll do is just set that up quickly to try it out. So if you just make a volume, you can specify the dimensions from your camera. You upgrading to 3090? I didn't get one. So right now I have something that's already like an RTX. This Quadro RTX 8000. So I think it's, I don't know if it's faster, but it has a ton of GPU RAM. So for doing fluid simulations, all these smoke simulations I do using the GPU, and these will actually run at like, this is just a flipbook or like a Playblast, but the simulation is quicker than, maybe takes like 20 minutes to do this entire 10-second animation. So it's really quick, but I might add some 3090s or maybe maybe like A1 3080 just to render stuff more quickly with Redshift. But yeah, I think for right now, just wait until they figure out the supply. It's a bit of a blunder on their behalf. So I'm just making this volume based off of the camera frustum. And then what I can do is only keep the shapes that are within the camera view. Do you use SLI? With Houdini, you can't use more than one GPU at once for the OpenCL stuff. So I've never done a super efficient build for like GPU rendering. But I think Redshift is built to take advantage of SLI, right? You can do group and then just use this to only select points that are inside of that volume now. So now it's just getting the points that are visible from the camera. And then if I just do this blast, I can just eliminate things based off of that group. NVLink. So this is 100 and kind of like 180,000, and then cut that in a quarter, go down to like 43,000. So generally that should speed things up. I guess if you really want to be efficient, you could get rid of some of the ones in the back. Looks like those aren't super noticeable, but yeah, this camera volume is super handy for consolidating your viewport. So even now you can see it's playing back a little bit more quickly. You might want to increase this window just a little bit to make sure like your shadows and stuff aren't flickering as stuff disappears, like as it leaves the frame. So maybe just like 20% of padding on all the edges of the frame. So now if we go back, render to mplay. That extraction procedural objects or whatever phase seems a lot quicker. It looks like we probably can get something like 10, 15 frames per minute now or something. SLI. Is it just for gaming? Or is NVLink even for gaming now? So yeah, it looks like even more than 10 frames per minute with this choline camera frustum. Camera frustum is just like the name of that trapezoid that is aligned, like a box aligned to fit in the camera view pretty much. But yeah, it can help a lot to do these steps if you're just doing like really quick scratch renders to sort out your lighting or other effects like that. So instead of wasting 8 hours to get a preview, you could get it maybe in like 30 minutes or something with this. Might even be able to do this in like 5 or 10 minutes. But yeah, this is probably going to be it for today. Hopefully my new HDMI wire will arrive. I feel like I'm dropping a lot of frames right now with pushing too much stuff through. There's too many GPUs stuff going on. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, just let this go for another few minutes. Thank you, Long Walk Dathan. Yeah, I don't know. It could be cool animating the cone angle of the spotlight or whatever, so that like the gobo, the texture like scale of that gobo is shrinking or expanding. But yeah, just doing these quick tests helps you get a sense of like actual lighting and shadow composition, stuff like that. Just really quick feedback. But yeah, I need to figure out, I'm gonna try to have a think about getting rid of some of those sharp shadows. Maybe breaking it out, like Jabram was saying, into another grid. Then you can really control like the pattern, the shadows, and like the frequency of the texture. But yeah, this is it for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks Blake Catherine for the raid again. I appreciate it. Anyone, if you're not following her, go ahead and do that. A much better composition and lighting advice than I've ever given. Take it easy. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with new and improved streaming setup.